Hello again, it's Miss Birds here, and we are continuing our color schemes project. Now, before today, you should have folded your paper so that you had a nice X going across the top with a long rectangular space. You should have created some type of pattern that you had in your top triangle here, and you should have, once you finished your pattern, gone through and outlined it. So I've gone through with my pencil and I've made it a little bit darker just so that it's easier to see through the tracing process. Remember, it's best to work with a plain sheet of copy paper, but if you have a piece of lined paper, it will work just the same. Now, for this tracing portion, it's gonna work best if you are in a dark area and you have a light, okay? So some type of light to work with. I have to tell you right now, I am in my kitchen. It is the middle of the day. It's almost 12 in the afternoon, and I have a lot of light coming in, but I'm gonna be using my cell phone, the flashlight on my cell phone, to go through and use as my light source for my transferring. You can also use your light from your Chromebook. There's a way that you can do that if you lay your Chromebook flat and you just have like a blank white screen on it and you can put your paper on top. Essentially what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be using the light almost as a light table. And what it does is it puts light underneath our design or our paper so that the pattern can come through. So you should have taken your pattern, and what we're gonna do, instead of redrawing that same thing over and over and over again, I'm just gonna go through and I'm gonna trace that pattern so that it comes up on these pages. Again, this is why we wanted to make sure our pattern wasn't overly complicated and that it was done not super simplistic, but that it had enough detail, but not too much to where it was gonna be kind of a pain to go through and retrace everything. Now, the first step is you want to take your paper where you drew on and you wanna flip it over on the back side. Okay, that way when we go through and we fold our paper over, we can see the design at the bottom and we'll be tracing onto the same side of the paper once it gets folded. So I'm taking my paper from where my design was and I'm just going to flip it over. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to fold my paper back on the crease so I can see that I have a crease going on right here. I'm just gonna fold my paper so that it matches back with that crease, the same fold. And my pattern's on the bottom, so I'm gonna be tracing onto this side. So when I open it up, I will have traced on this side of my paper. Okay, so my paper is folded. Again, I have my design on the back. My paper is folded over it, and I'm going to be tracing on this side of my triangle. So what I'm gonna do is if you have a Chromebook that you're working from for a light source, you wanna put the Chromebook underneath your paper. That way your paper shines through the light. Again, today I'm gonna be using my cell phone, so I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm going to put on the flashlight feature, right? You can see my light is on, there we go. And again, it may be a little bit harder to see because I am in a very well-lit area. If you're in a place where it's darker, that's gonna work best for you because it's gonna create more contrast and you're gonna see your pattern easily. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to place my phone with the light shining up and I'm going to place it over here. And it's a little hard to see, but if you see in this corner, right, when I move my light around, you should be able to see a pattern. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to trace that same pattern on this side of my paper. Again, because I'm doing it on camera, it may be a little difficult, but if you're doing it at your house, it should be easy enough for you to see. So I'm just gonna go through and I'm gonna retrace all the lines that I see on my pattern here. And if I move the paper up a little bit off the surface, I can see it a little bit better. Okay, so I'm just going through and tracing my entire pattern here. And again, it may be difficult for you to see the trace from underneath because of the lighting and because I'm doing it on camera, but hopefully when you're doing this step on your own at home, you'll see that you can actually really see the pattern very well. Again, remember before we start, we want to make sure that the pattern that we originally drew is really dark, right? So you want to draw it right, draw it light until you get it right, and then go through and trace over it. Because again, when it comes to this step, it's gonna be a lot easier to trace if those lines are really dark. If they're too light, it's gonna be really difficult to see your pattern against the light. So you wanna make sure that you're doing it very dark once you've figured out how you want it to look. And again, I'm just going through and I'm retracing the entire pattern that I drew onto this triangle here. And again, if you put your paper like flat down on your light, it may be a little difficult to see your pattern underneath. So you just kind of want to maybe even lift your paper up. That's what I'm doing with my phone because I'm working with a very small light. You may be able to see it easier if you just flip your Chromebook flat, and you can just look up a white background on Google and have that be the background, that like background image while you're going through, and it'll work the same, right? So essentially we're creating a light table so that we can go through and trace our design. And the light will help us do that through the paper. So I'm going through here, making sure that I don't miss any part of my pattern. Because of course, if I miss any part, I'm gonna have to redraw it by myself and it may not come out exactly the same. So I wanna go through and trace my pattern completely, make sure I don't miss anything. Make sure I'm tracing dark enough so that I can see that pattern. And if you'd like, after we finish the tracing part, you can go over it with like a black colored pencil, or if you have a ballpoint pen or a marker, that's also fine. You can do that too. That way your lines look nice and even. And almost done here. I just have to finish this little bottom portion. Almost done. Okay, so now I've gone through, I have completed my entire pattern. So now when I flip that page down and I go to the other side of my paper, I have now completed my pattern, right? So everything that I have here is now on here, and I could go through and I could make that a little bit darker, right? That's fine. If I want to darken it up, I can also go through with, like I said, like a pen or a black marker, just so that it looks a little bit nicer. And we are going to continue that step of tracing until you've completed your other two triangles. So we're taking the same step, right? I'm going to flip my paper over. I'm going to fold it back, and I'm going to use my light to retrace all of it, okay? Until I have all four of my sections complete with the same design. Once you're done with all four sections, again, you can go through and you just want to darken the lines so that they all look the same. Okay, so this may take you all class period. So for the next class period, we'll talk about how we're going to go through and how we're going to color these and what color schemes we are going to be using. All right, so that is how you trace on your project.